In the middle of Huntington, West Virginia, there's a river. Next to this river, there's a steel mill. And next to the steel mill, there is a university. Close to this school is Northcott Court. Recently, the city of Huntington was given the green light to demolish Northcott Court, a low-income housing development that was home to many generations of Huntingtonians. Northcott Court, once full of life, love, and hope, has unfortunately become full of struggle.
A plan to tear down and rebuild housing in the Fairfield area of Huntington has gotten the green light. One of the oldest housing units under the care of the Huntington Housing Authority, Northcott Court, will be demolished. Huntington Mayor Steve Williams recently made the announcement during his State of the City address.
The road was recently cleared for the demolition of Northcott Court to commence for 2 new 40-unit senior housing complexes and an additional 50 single-family and duplex housing units are going to be constructed in the Fairfield neighborhood.
The Housing Authority plans to demolish the housing complex along Halger Boulevard. They will move the current residents to suitable housing nearby. The new units the mayor talked about will be scattered throughout the area, and not all concentrated in one place like the Northcott facilities. Once Northcott is torn down, officials hope there will be commercial development on the property. The relocation process has already started for some residents and will pick up in the spring. Northcott Court has become synonymous, fairly or unfairly, with crime in Huntington and more directly crime in the Fairfield area of the city. Since the 1940s, Northcott Court has been one of the first things people see as they drive into the city from the Halger exit off Interstate 64. Changing this first impression is important for the community and the city.
Unapologetically outspoken Northcott resident Philip Rogers takes a break from spending time with his granddaughter for a candid discussion.
My name is Philip Wade Rogers Sr., and I've been here in Huntington, West Virginia for 52 years.
How long you been living in Northcott?
Northcott for about 6 years.
How do you feel about the tearing down of Northcott Court?
It's a good thing, especially if they're going to build like them habitat houses that they've been building, or them 3-4 bedroom houses that they've been building. That's a good thing right there. Stay in your own community. Don't let them move you out. Stay here, because this is us. This is our community. I've been here 52 years. I know people that's been here longer than that. Why don't you walk behind the camera? See, we got junkies everywhere. That's the whole point. See what's moved in? It's sad. You go to the store across the street, what do you see? Junkies and drug dealers. It's sad. The moving of, maybe that's Huntington's idea of moving everybody out of the community, trying to keep that element out, but it's not gonna work because they're just moving with them. And now it's down in the West End. It's always been up Guyandotte. Come on, it's always been in the West End as well. They just use the black community as the place to shun.
Meet District 5 Councilwoman Sandra Clements.
I'm Sandra Clements, and I'm currently serving my 2nd term on Huntington City Council, representing District 5. In my real life, I work as the Director of Disability Services at Marshall University. And in February, I will have been here 25 years.
Very impressive. Okay, my first question. What motivated you to become a member of Huntington City Council?
You know, that's a really good question, because I am not a politician, have never been known to be a politician, except for the last 7 years. But what happened was that the newspaper article appeared saying that Brandy Jacob Jones, who is currently the City Council woman for District 5, was stepping down to go to work in the mayor's office. And I thought, let me see what this might be like. I want to try. I'm always a person who's looking for something new and exciting. And I thought, the seat will be open for 14 months. I can do anything for 14 months. So let me try it and see whether or not I like it. I think that when I came on council, the community was overrun by active drug dealers who never hid the fact that they were selling drugs, who openly approached people, sold drugs, people bought drugs in the community. And the people who lived in the neighborhood who were left stopped being neighbors. They didn't sit out in the evening and talk. They barely talked to anybody. And I think there was a sense that the community was dying. A.D. Lewis Center was not viable as it had been in the past. And not long after I came on council, there was a large discussion about closing A.D. Lewis Pool, which is the center of the community for kids in the summer. I think that senior citizens had lost faith, and that the folks who were actively here were either busy and not really concerned about the community anymore. And that's a big change from when I was a young kid. There were people always out, people along the way who cared, and if I did something between my house and my grandmother's house, my grandmother knew before I got there, or my mother knew, vice versa. But we had our own businesses, Black-owned businesses, and the community was busy and thriving from the 1950s up until probably the 1980s. At that point, the city just changed. That there was a large influx of people. When I was a kid, everybody knew everybody. And my mother would say, well, that's so-and-so's child. Or my grandmother would say, oh, yes, that's so-and-so's granddaughter. I mean, everybody knew each other. And somewhere about the 60s, somewhere about the 70s and 80s, that all changed. We did not know people, and there was a sense of fear. Don't stay away from those people. You don't know who they are, what they do. And of course, Black businesses began to decline. We've seen a community that is slowly dying.
Towards the end of the summer of 1940, the city of Huntington prepared Northcott Court, Markham Terrace, and Washington Square for occupancy. Keep in mind that during this time, segregation was law, so Northcott Court and Markham Terrace housed white families, and Washington Square housing was for blacks. Of course, nearly a quarter century later, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was enacted on July 2nd and outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Fair Housing Act, provided equal housing opportunities under the same provisions as the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Let's take a look back in time to the late summer of 1940, right before these low-income housing developments were to be occupied. One early advertisement per the Herald-Dispatch describes Markham Terrace as being one of the most beautifully designed group of homes in America. The ad also reveals that 284 homes for white families would be ready for occupancy by September 1st, so don't delay. Live the American way in Markham Terrace, Northcott Court, or Washington Square. On August 15, 1940, another article reads, "Moving starts at Northcott, and also that Washington Square and Markham Terrace will be opened on September 1st. Oh, how elegant was the typical kitchen in Huntington Housing Authority homes." On August 27th, another article reads, "Only 18 Northcott apartments empty," also stating that the Washington Square project for Negroes will open the following week. On September 1st, 1940, a Herald-Dispatch article reads, "Negro project takes tenants." One more article on September 2nd reads, 159 families now in 2 housing units. Obviously, these luxurious apartments were in high demand. Fast forward to 2014. Indeed, these housing developments have undergone many changes and improvements. But what about the people? What about the community? Meet Kirk Gillenwater, entrepreneur and former Huntington City Councilman.
Hello, Huntington. My name is Kirk Gillenwater, Huntingtonian for almost 40 years now. And the only time I left Huntington was when I did go to the military, served in the United States Air Force for 11 years. Came back home and I wanted to do something to help Huntington, so I applied to be a member of city council. I'm a previous city councilman. Me, myself, I come from low income. I grew up in Markham Terrace, which is another part of the Northcott Court community. And as you see, I made wealth for myself. I left Huntington, went to the Air Force, came back, became an entrepreneur. Currently, I'm a business manager at Dutch Miller Kia. When I was growing up, there was a lot of families in Northcott. We used Northcott as a cut through to the A.D. Lewis Boys Club. Very safe. But one thing about that, there was a lot of families that knew families here in Huntington. That's the difference than when I moved back. There's a lot of people here that didn't even know. So the big change is that there's a lot of people that came into Huntington that really wasn't part of Huntington or knew anything about Huntington. Okay, who let it become an eyesore? If Northcott was taken care of the way other properties are taken care of, then I don't think it would have become an eyesore. I think after so long, of letting it, letting the drugs and letting, without doing background checks, things like that, to people coming into the project. I think that was the problem with Northcott. I don't think it became an eyesore on its own. As far as better housing, we'll see where they house people. Are they going to house people in a community, or are they going to spread them out through the community? And what I mean by that, are they going to spread them out down the West End? Are they going to put people out in Barbersville? Are they going to put people up in, up on Norway Avenue? Those are the type of places that, have generally been in affluent neighborhoods, Highland area, which I represented on city council. So, the question isn't going to be, is the housing going to be better? It's going to be what they're going to do with the housing. Growing up in Huntington, I've seen the way the drugs progressed, and I do say that there was a blind eye turn. It was moved from 12th Avenue to 10th Avenue, and then from 10th Avenue to Artisan Avenue, but it never was a problem. Like, there never was a fight on drugs like it is now, because it's out of Fairfield East neighborhood. Now it's showing up on Norway Avenue, and it's showing up down in the West End, showing up out in Barbersville. And as you see, the city has a fight against drugs now that's really, really interesting.
They really ain't doing nothing. They don't do nothing until the upper class come down here and get in trouble. That's when they do something.
When Skip Holbrook came to the city of Huntington and became the chief of police, he knew that there was a disconnect. And he began those steps of bridging that gap between the Huntington Police Department and the Black community. And I said to him on many occasions, Chief, you are coming into a situation that you did not make. That for years and years and years, there's been a huge disconnect between the Black community and the police department. And that I could tell you stories that would make your hair curl about how the Huntington Police Department members, some of them, treated the residents in the Fairfield West District. But that didn't faze him. Anytime there was a public meeting, he was there. Anytime I asked him to come and do something, he came. And having that presence and having a look at the community and deciding that he could make a difference by increasing patrols, asking for money, certainly buying into the Weed and Seed project that went into the Barnett Center. He became the face that made the difference with the police department. With his leaving the department, we'll see where it goes now. But I think that he started a process, and I hope that the new chief will continue that process of being out in the neighborhood again. And part of that has to do with how much money does the police department have to run. That when the city fathers, before my time, decided to decrease the number of police officers, that also sent a signal to criminals that we have a freeway here. And so even though there may have been minimal drug activity before, when you decrease the police department and try to spread them over the area of Huntington, you decrease the efficiency. And you also decrease the sense of security. And so I think that the city is now taking a look at that. We need to beef up the police department. City Council gave the mayor $500,000 to hire 10 new police officers and to reduce the crime rate. And I think many other things will come out of that. When you put people on the street, when you do neighborhood policing, when you put out the bike patrol, those people have connections to people in the community. They know who they are, they know who should be there and who shouldn't, and all that has to increase the efficiency. I think that when you operate a hotline, that people can call and say, I see this activity in my neighborhood, and there is some response to that hotline. It may not come today, it may not come tomorrow, but eventually there's a response. And it helps to build the relationship between the Black community. I was dismayed when those 4 young people were killed over on Charleston Avenue. And the police department did not take a visible stand right then. They did not assure people in the community that this was maybe a one-time thing, or maybe we need to be cautious, we need to do something in order, the usual things that happen after there's a crisis. What do? We gather, we talk, we come up with some strategy. That did not happen when those 4 young people died. I don't care that they were involved in some illegal activity. A human life is a human life. And those human lives touch other lives. And I think when that happened and the police department nor the city took a real open stand, that deteriorated what was left of any type of relationship. And only when Skip Holbrook came did that begin to change.
Meet Larry Peters, scholar and historian.
Larry White Peters, former educator for 40 years, guidance counselor, Vietnam veteran, attended Douglas High School, West Virginia State, West Virginia University, spent about a year at the University of Florida, law school, additional work at Ohio State. When I was growing up, there were no blacks past 14th Street that lived. It's always been a ghetto thing where blacks were from Dalton to 7th Avenue, from really 20th Street to 16th Street. And then in 7th Avenue, there was black population clubs and things from 8th Street to I guess about 13th Street. Had several nightclubs and things and black businesses. We had several businesses, several doctors, you know, several lawyers. And, you know, I think the key was when they closed down Douglas, that was the heart of our institution, you know, and we didn't have any really strong leaders. I guess Pastor Mitchell, 16th Street, he was the first I know of a black city councilman. I guess he was the closest thing to a so-called black leader. You know, I think when they closed Douglas, man, that really hurt us.
Douglas High School, built in 1924, was the segregation-era high school for African Americans in Huntington.
Jackie Smith said we went from Douglas to Huntington High. When they closed it, we went to caring and nurturing teachers that teachers didn't give a crap about. You know, I know when I went to Ole, the first blacks to go to Ole, the first thing the teacher said, "You niggers, y'all don't know nothing. We're gonna put you in the dumb row." And every one of us except one went to college. Experience when I went over Ole that time, and then teachers called niggers. Nigger teachers don't know nothing. They didn't even test us or nothing. Just automatically put us in the dumb row. Yeah. And then they turned us down and come back.
How do you feel about the gentrification of Northcott Court?
Well, you know, I mentioned to the incoming mayor, they had a meeting over St. Peter's Claver, and I told them that how they gonna handle the displaced people, and they said we're gonna have some housing, and at the time it was supposed to start I think a year or two earlier. I said that's awful sudden, you know. Well, we can find housing for them. You know, I think it's like typical Huntington, poor planning. Brain power is limited here in Huntington, in my opinion. That doesn't have nothing to do with Democrats or Republicans.
Well, actually, speaking of planning, Huntington's Office of Communications did release a fact sheet for the Northcott Development Project, stating, among other things, that some displaced tenants accepted Section 8 vouchers for private units, while others will move to public housing complexes owned by the Housing Authority. Now, as far as demolition, all materials, appliances, doors, cabinets, and windows, and more would be repurposed, and the tearing down of the remaining 10 buildings would occur over a 3-year period. Replacement housing will be in the form of 2 40-unit senior townhouse complexes and 50 family-based units in the Dalton and Charleston Avenue areas. Also, the Housing Authority will not build residential developments on the 3.9-acre Northcott Court property. The Fairfield community has requested a grocery store be built on the property, and the Housing Authority will do everything it can to honor that request. So the planning seems well strategized, but actions speak louder than words. Residents are adamant about the need of a grocery store in the area.
Different leaders in the community was that we'd like to see a grocery store in our neighborhood. That's one thing that our neighborhood doesn't have. It's always had a grocery store for elderly people that aren't able to travel out to Walmart and places like that. I'd like to see a grocery store put in. We've had one at Big Bear. We had, a long time ago, we had A&P. When I was growing up, we had Foodland. So, I mean, we had grocery stores here in the neighborhood that people could walk to, and I'd like to see that replaced.
We don't need no restaurants or nothing like that, but a grocery store, this area needs a grocery store bad. We don't need no more hospital. We don't need no more anything to do with that. Hospitals or what else is Marshall. We don't need no more. We need a store in this community.
Okay, back to gentrification. What exactly does this word mean? What are the pros and cons? How do you feel about the gentrification of Northcott Court? Have you or someone you know lived in Northcott Court? Your grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, maybe your best friend. Many hard-working, successful people were raised in Northcott Court. Many hard-working, successful people in the United States were once residents of low-income housing.
One of the big things in Huntington is we're always behind the 8 ball. We're not proactive. We want to take care of the problem after the problem exists rather than going after the problem before it becomes a problem. Two things need to be done. One, we need to become more involved. What I say involved, I mean that we need to come out and vote. We need to make sure that, you know, the people that are in city government are there because we want them there. As far as HPD, we need to have some people from Huntington on HPD that knows the background of Huntington, that knows how to handle people from Huntington. Currently, I know we don't want to get into it a lot, but currently we've had a couple shootings from a police officer that, you know, killed a couple people. And, you know, one shooting, that's questionable. But 2 or 3, now you really have to ask the question, what's going on?
I think he should have been removed from office. That's just my opinion, you know. You're just going around, you know, just killing people, you know. And that is murder. I mean, whether you're a police officer or not. Like I said, my dad was a police officer. And a little town like Huntington killed 2 people. And the two ones he killed were black. And the other guy he shot was white. I think he shot him a couple of times. You know, I mean, policeman is a dangerous job, but I would put him behind the desk or get rid of him.
I think Skip did a great job when he was down there, and I'd like to see our HPD progress in fighting the drugs in Huntington, but we need to do it the right way.
I eat with Audie Atkins, usually on Fridays, and we had a deep discussion on that. I mean, here's Charleston, West Virginia, only about 40 miles away. They currently have about 20-some black policemen. They had a black police chief, Dallas Staples, for about 5 years. The fire department have 20-some, where Huntington has maybe 2 black firemen and 3 policemen. And the problem is I think it's this systematic racism. You know, my dad was a policeman for about 20-some years in the sheriff's department. You know, they've not made an effort. Now here recently they've made some efforts to hire black policemen, but in the past, you know, old black folks say that the old timers say that Martinsburg, West Virginia, Huntington, West Virginia, and Bluefield, West Virginia were the 3 most racist towns in the state of West Virginia. Now, I don't have any scientific proof of that, other than hiring practices and things, you know.
I call them Ku Klux Klan. Basically, police department is the Ku Klux Klan in Huntington, West Virginia, and everywhere else. They quick to kill a black man, but you ain't killing nobody else.
Everybody who drives into Huntington from the interstate will, when they drive past those projects, have that same feeling that anybody has in any city. Is it an eyesore? Probably. Can we make it better? Yes. So can we make it better for the city and the residents who used to live there? Yes.
Wow, as soon as I came into town, first thing I saw was some black guys dealing drugs at the projects. I never saw that in the brochure about Marshall. At least the hospital is close by.
Oh, stop. Just because there's low income there does not mean those guys were selling drugs. Jesus Christ. Relax.
No, they were selling drugs. I scored some heroin.
Heroin? Really? I wonder if they got some weed.
Probably.
Yay, I heard drugs were bad in this town. Anyways, do you think you can take me there to get some weed?
The perception is that there is lots of crime in Northcott. Whether that perception is right or not, I don't know. But I do believe that when you move people away from a concentrated area in which this activity is acceptable, and you move them out into the community then has some say on what happens. If my neighbors moved in next door and they didn't believe in keeping their yard straight, trash everywhere, stuff, noise all hours of the day and night, I think it's my responsibility as a neighbor to say, let's have some discussion about this. We don't like this in the neighborhood. Come on, let's plant some flowers. And I think moving people away from an environment where something was acceptable into an environment that is not acceptable actually helps the neighborhood and the person and the family to develop some other values. And so I would say that if a person was dealing drugs in Northcott or in that drug community, they may not be as bold with it when they move into another neighborhood. But time will tell.
I said I wouldn't invest a nickel in this town. It's on the way out, unless they're going to change, you know. And the Mayor Williams, I must say, offering prayer up, that definitely helped. You got to get close to the Lord. And he's the only mayor I ever seen done that. The rest of them, Gene.
Recently, in a video that went viral, Mayor Williams asked local congregations to pray to combat the drug epidemic.
In our region that is taking us down. What I'm wanting to ask you is if you would join all the churches within the tri-state and have your church, during your Sunday services, participate in prayer with all the other churches, all the other congregations throughout the tri-state area.
I think it is the mayor's job as the head of the city to do everything possible. I don't know what those things are. I don't, but I would say that maybe we should have started with prayer a long time ago. But I'm sure that, I'm very pleased with the direction the mayor is taking the city. The mayor does not ever understand the word no. He's always looking for possibilities. And if those possibilities exist to make a difference in Huntington, he'll find it and he'll put it in place.
We as blacks, I mean, especially young blacks, have had the opportunity handed right to them. They, seem like they're allergic to books. They don't want to read, a chance of a lifetime. As my dad told me, my brother, hey, get that education. They can't take it from you.
Mike, just in closing, I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to come out and speak today. One thing I'd like to say to Huntington is, get involved. Make sure that, the people are in office that you want in office. The last time that we had an election, only 30% of our community voted. That's a big number. 70% did not vote that are eligible to vote. So let's make sure we get out and vote, get the people in office we need in office, that we want in office, to do the things that we want to get done to make Huntington go further in the future.
Now that the buildings adjacent to Hal Greer Boulevard have been torn down, the Northcott community is beginning to dissipate. Gentrification isn't always a bad thing, is it? For a community to grow and prosper, change is an omnipresent necessity. But if any given community is displaced, for whatever reasons, low income or not, what sense of community will those displaced residents have? Well, in a sense, history has shown that for civilization to advance, whether it be socioeconomically, technologically, even morally, there comes a time to destroy and rebuild. Learn from mistakes, missteps, and bad judgments, adapt to change, and move forward. Northcott Court, Washington Square, and Markham Terrace were an orchestration of the government to segregate low-income citizens from those more affluent, a system set up by the government to keep certain groups of people dependent upon welfare as opposed to being a stepping stone during financial struggles to a more prosperous living. Of course, the moral compass of the United States of America in the 1940s, when the first residents of these housing developments moved in, was despicable, cruel, unjust, and ignorant, which is why it is not ironic that today, 3/4 of a century later, behavior in these types of housing developments is often despicable, cruel, unjust, and ignorant. So yes, destroy and rebuild. However, vices will follow the people. Drug abuse, crime, and negative behavior have no boundaries, no prejudices. Until we rehabilitate, educate, and facilitate change, the proverbial feeding them cake during a famine will only prolong the agony, whilst total destruction lingers on the horizon. Over the course of the next few years, demolition will continue at Northcott, as well as the displacement of the residents. Hopefully, the transition will be a smooth one for all involved. Mayor Williams' Operation River to Jail, a program which basically targets the out-of-state drug dealers, will continue. Residents are speaking up, helping to combat the drug dealers by reporting suspicious behavior. River to Jail to date has already taken over 200 drug dealers and criminals off of the streets. Huntington also has a new chief of police, Mr. Joseph Cicciarelli, very experienced as well as being a proven leader. People are working hard, taking care of themselves and their families. All in all, Huntington is changing for the better, and eliminating Northcott Court invites a new beginning for economic growth not only in the Fairfield community, but for all of Huntington. Gentrification isn't always a bad thing, is it?
They're moving all of the brothers and sisters out of the black community and putting us on the outskirts of Huntington and bringing Wayne County, Lincoln County, and all them folks in here, you know. They're moving us out of our own community. That's been going on for years too.